What's up, witches? You're listening to The Bewitching Hour. I'm your host, Kat, and I'll be dropping exciting episodes covering everything from the history of witchcraft, aliens, the paranormal, ghost stories, and I'm excited to have guests on who have a story to tell, as well as share my experiences and perspective on living life as a modern-day witch. Grab your brooms, because it's about to get real. Welcome back to The Bewitching Hour. Woo! I hope you all like true crime because honestly, this episode I'm going to be solo. Y'all know, like my favorite thing ever. And I'm recapping my road trip from last weekend where I got cozy with the town of Buffalo, Missouri and the spooky things that happened to me and my friends over the course of 4 days and like 700 miles. I've been looking so forward to recording this episode because of the experience alone and the amount of research I did to be able to tell this story back like accurately. But anyway, let's pull your card for this week. This is going to be probably a pretty long episode, so I just want to kind of get right into it. By the way, while I was in Buffalo, I actually did a couple of oracle card readings, and these people loved it. I was shocked. I was like, oh no, they're going to think I'm crazy. Like I always say, I'm not. But I was like, they're going to think I'm crazy. They're going to think this is weird, this. And I got such positive feedback and like validation. Anyway, I digress. This week's card is the mummy. So the mummy means change. The ancient Egyptians took death very seriously. Death was not seen as many of us see it, a finality to be dreaded, but as just the beginning of a new life and often eternal life in a better place, the afterlife. The practice of honoring and preserving the body through a complex process of mummification was central to ancient Egypt culture. This was not just a physical embalming process, but a carefully enacted ritual process that ensured preservation in the next world. Many other cultures also mummified their dead, including the Incas, the Argentinians, the Maori, I hope I said that right, and many of the cultures of the Torres Strait Islands. In our modern horror genres, the mummy has become an icon. From early horror writing at the turn of the century to the very popular films The Mummy and The Mummy Returns, the plot normally revolves around the mummy returning to life and cursing and hunting down the living. The discovery of King Tut, his tombs, and other long-hidden Egyptian treasures in the 1920s in particular sparked an explosion in mummy-related films and literature. Should you pull the moaning mummy card from the deck, know that change is inevitable, and no matter how hard you try, things will not be preserved exactly the same way. The card also indicates that this change will be for the better. The endings, the closed doors, the barriers, this is all just a healthy pause and an indication that a change of tactics is needed. You are not cursed, you have just developed a pattern. You can take control and change it. I love this card. This is such a good one. Wow. So yeah, I was trying to keep on theme and stick with the Halloween Oracle since we're talking about some spoopy shit this episode. Can we talk really quick about how podcasts have the power to bring so many people together? I have made some of the best friends through the podcast community. And in today's episode, I just have to give a huge shout out to my friends Christine and Jessica. Y'all know Jessica from episode 5. Jess and I met Chris through another podcast. It's kind of a long story. I will probably never go into it. Lots of drama, but I am very thankful for the people I met. We are the 3 that have the matching cat tattoos that you've also heard me previously talk about. It's just so nice to have people in your life that get you and are so supportive. Anyway, I just love them so much, and I had the happiest 4 days I've had in a while. So Christine obviously used to live in Texas, and I truly miss our nights out together. Except for that weekend. I don't know if I can ever drink a White Claw ever again, but she and her daughters, Liz and Bird, moved to Buffalo, Missouri. Yes, Missouri, not New York. So when I say Buffalo, just forget New York altogether. No offense, New York. I just don't want to have to say Buffalo, Missouri because it's long. So just Buffalo, it is. Also, I did not see a single buffalo the entire time I was there except for like a ceramic painted one. So that was kind of weird. Anyway, Liz graduated from high school, so Jessica and I drove out to Buffalo to be there for the graduation and obviously see Christine. And when I say this place is like a Hallmark movie meets like Desperate Housewives, but very country. I'm not kidding. Chris lives super close to like the little downtown area, and her house is also lovingly haunted. We will get to that later. So I did a ton of research, as I do before the trip, on haunted places that we could stop at along the way. I did not have much success with Texas haunts. I think those are more south for me, but we did find this place, and I'm going to tell you guys all about it. So it was a very creepy journey getting there, like a lot of back roads and roadkill, but we traveled to this place in, and I hope I don't say this wrong, I had to like spell it out for myself, Potawatomi. So we traveled to Potawatomi County in Oklahoma to check out the Sacred Heart Mission, which is actually now just the Sacred Heart Catholic Church. The area the mission and the church are located in is considered an unincorporated community, or, like a whole ass ghost town, hence why I was interested. The mission was established in 1879 by Father Isidore Robot, who was a French monk, and I'm sure I'm not saying his last name right, but it is literally spelled like robot, so we're going to go with it. It was originally intended to be a school for the Native American boys that lived near the community. And when I say school, there were 2 Native American boys and 1 white boy. That's how big it was. Father Robot actually made a deal with the Native Americans in the area for a tribal grant of land. So the Sacred Heart Mission was born. By 1884, it had grown to include a girls' school, convent, horse stables, shops for the blacksmith and carpenter, and randomly a bakery. So the French sisters, or like the nuns that lived and worked there, were known to bake 500 loaves of bread daily for the mission. So just to kind of give you some more backstory, on January 15th, 1901, the dining room unfortunately caught fire and spread to the majority of the buildings that I just mentioned. They had to rebuild the church, find temporary solutions for the schools, but now it's like really just the church that remains and the cemetery, and that's what you see from the main road. We couldn't actually get to the part of the mission that I would have liked to see because it was closed to the public at that time. I don't know if it was due to COVID or to other things, not really sure. That was kind of disappointing, but only the bakery and log cabin remain standing today, so no big deal. So when they did rebuild the church, it was quite a while after the fire. They started construction in 1905, but the church wasn't actually finished until 1914, and that's the building that we visited, me and Jess, in hopes of some sort of paranormal activity. I don't know, I just feel like I really wanted it to be haunted since I literally ran over like 1,200 dead animals just to get there. As far as it being haunted, like, I'm really not sure. I think every place definitely has the potential. From what I've read, no one actually died in the fire, but people have reported hearing like weird animalistic growling sounds on the property and seeing apparitions of what appear to be the monks that used to work there. People have also reported seeing a brief flash of a little girl hanging in the place of Jesus on a cross statue that's located there. And also, I did read reports of people hearing voices talking in other languages. There have also been rumors of Satan worshipers that go out there to host rituals, so that's cute. People attempt to ghost hunt there frequently, despite the near townspeople being like very insistent that it is not haunted. We tried to ask when we went in the church. So when we get to the church, like mass was going on, so we just walked around the graveyard for a little bit, but we wanted to go inside and talk to the people that actually work there. And of course, like I said, I had done research, so I had read online how haunted it supposedly was, but nothing I found was really clear on which location was actually haunted. Like I said, it was a mission, but that part of the property is down a little further and wasn't open. This sweet little lady that was inside of the church, I'm not sure what her job title was or anything, but she let us use the bathroom, so goddamn bless her for that. But she was also like very, very insistent that it was such a peaceful place. And like even weirder, everyone else that we talked to there and asked, is this place haunted? They said essentially the same thing. Such a peaceful place. Like, I got weird vibes. And the first lady we talked to even said something about rumors and people believing what they read online. I did read a few comments on YouTube of people saying, don't let them convince you that it isn't haunted. And in one of the YouTube videos I watched, one guy was doing a tour of Oklahoma ghost towns and stopped there. And he stated he was asked by the people of the church to not disclose that it is in fact haunted. Lots of mixed reviews. Honestly, who knows? I will say the cemetery is very creepy. In general, the whole place is extremely pretty, and I can see how it's, peaceful for people that like that small town, non-existent ghost town vibe. We confirmed that there are babies buried in the cemetery, and the bodies of monks and nuns are also laid to rest there. So maybe they do haunt the property. Like I said, who knows? I just definitely think it was creepy how several people told us that it in fact was not haunted, and to spread the word that it is not haunted. Like, what are y'all hiding? You know what I mean? Also, they were really interested in wanting to know if Jessica and I were Catholic. I wasn't quite sure about that part, but moving on. So, like I said, not many other places to stop at until we got to Missouri. So we make it to Buffalo, and Chris and I are talking all about how her house is haunted. It was built in the 1800s, so I can only imagine. Her brother did pass a few months ago, and both of her girls and she have seen him. Her daughter Liz told me that he sits on her bed like nightly, and we actually slept in her room the first night. Nothing to report. We did sleep in Bird's room the second night, and again, uneventful. This story continues, but I have to walk y'all through the steps. So the third night was a Sunday that we were in Buffalo. Things were starting to kind of calm down a bit. The graduation was over. Family members started leaving. Things were just settling. So we booked a ghost tour in Jefferson City to tour the Missouri State Penitentiary. And y'all, strap in. This is just a crazy story. So I'm going to give you some history before I start telling the stories of the experiences that we had there. Because like I said, we did the ghost tour. So some information I gathered from Wikipedia. I read an article by J.J. Maloney from Crime Magazine, an article by Jason Rowe of the Kansas City Public Library, and some facts I just kind of remember from the ghost tour that we did there. I'm giving credit where it's due. The Missouri State Penitentiary is located in Jefferson City. It's about an hour and a half from where we were staying in Buffalo. You basically drive through the Ozarks to get there, and it is a really pretty drive. The penitentiary was open and functioning from March of 1836 until it was shut down in October of 2004 due to deteriorating conditions. The paint is peeling off this place, y'all. It's been hit by a tornado. There's been a fire, riots, lots of prisoners. It's just kind of falling apart. But from March of 1836 until it shut down in October of 2004, that's almost 17 decades of nothing but sadness and anger and criminal energy inhabiting the place. And just a fun fact, the same year it opened was the same year the Alamo in Texas fell. And it also served as the oldest operating penal facility west of the Mississippi River, as well as the state of Missouri's primary maximum security institution. So let's talk about some notable inmates that were serving their time there. James Earl Ray, probably one of the better-known prisoners, was a raging racist. He was admitted to the pen on March 17th of 1960, and he was the guy who assassinated Martin Luther King Jr. in Memphis, Tennessee. He managed to escape Missouri State in 1967 in a truck full of loaves of bread. I don't know why bread keeps coming up in this episode, but you're welcome. He managed to escape. He was in a truck full of bread that was being sent to another prison. He hightailed it to Mexico, became a porn director for a bit, so that's cute, and eventually moved back to the U.S. He was convicted again once he got back here, but he managed to escape from another prison in Tennessee. He was caught just days after that escape, and he spent the rest of his life locked away in prison and eventually died from hepatitis C. The next one is Charles Ray Hatcher. He was another inmate. He is considered one of America's worst serial killers, and he was serving a life sentence at Missouri State. He admitted to murdering and sexually assaulting at least 16 victims within a 12-year span. And when I Googled his pictures, seeing his face immediately just gave me bad vibes. He's sinister looking. I'd also like to mention the majority of his victims were kids, and that, I just can't. That's so sad. I believe the youngest was 7 years old. He had actually asked for the death sentence and was denied, so he hung himself in his cell in 1984. And, prison mates don't take kindly to, kid killers, so I feel like he probably wouldn't have lasted long regardless. And finally, the more horrific duo I've heard of in a while, Bonnie Brown Heady and Carl Austin Hall. So Bonnie Brown, not necessarily an attractive woman, but not a complete woof of a woman either. I mean, she had her luck with the men. She was a pretty well-known prostitute, actually. She was married to a bank robber, and she was a heavy, heavy drinker and was self-admittedly addicted to criminals. When her bank robber husband was shot and killed by the police, she just smiled and was quoted saying, "That's too bad." Like, mood, girl, mood. So her partner in this story, Carl Austin Hall, was the son of a wealthy lawyer who just never seemed to get his shit together. His dad, had all this money. He inherited some of it and then just lost it all. He robbed taxi cabs for a living. I think the most he ever made was like $35 to $38. And he spent his life dreaming about his big monetary break. Carl and Bonnie start dating. They would frequently get drunk together, and occasionally Carl would get physical with Bonnie. When she was actually arrested, she had what they said were Carl markings all over her. Now, Bonnie only had one victim throughout her lifetime, but it's a horrible story, so let's bring in the Greenlease family. By the way, Bonnie and Carl would actually frequently drive to Kansas City, where the Greenleases lived, to observe and follow them. And what I'm about to explain is pretty disturbing, because what happened to this family was very much so planned in full detail. Bobby Greenlease was the 7-year-old son of Robert and Virginia Greenlease. Robert was one of the largest Cadillac dealers in America at the time, and they were an extremely wealthy family. Bobby Greenlease was enrolled at Notre Dame de Sion, an upscale private Catholic school that's located in Kansas City. And on the morning of September 28th of 1953, 41-year-old Bonnie Brown Heady walked into Notre Dame de Sion and told the nuns that she was Bobby Greenlease's aunt and that his mother, Virginia, had suffered a heart attack while they were shopping and that she needed to take Bobby to the hospital immediately to see her. The nuns complied because, that's a pretty believable story, I feel like. They let Bobby leave with her, and one school staff member even recalled how Bobby left with Bonnie without any hesitation. He just put his little hand in hers and off they went. Terrifying. So obviously Bonnie was not Bobby Greenlease's aunt, and she too commented on how trusting he was. I mean, how sick. I can't even imagine how he was feeling, thinking his mother had actually had a heart attack and now this strange lady has come to pick him up. Like, how confusing for a child. Right after they left the school, Bonnie drove to the parking lot where Carl Hall was waiting, and they drove to Kansas with Bobby in the car. They stopped at a field. Bonnie takes a long walk. Carl does the unthinkable. At first, Carl tried to strangle Bobby, and when that didn't work, he punched him and actually knocked out his front tooth. Finally, he ends up pushing Bobby down. He shot him in the head with a pistol. Bobby barely lived for 30 minutes after being abducted. So from the time he left his school and got to this field, that was the last 30 minutes of his life. That's insane. So then they drive back to Bonnie Brown Heady's house, where they buried Bobby in a grave that Hall had dug the night before. And they planted flowers over the grave to make it look like it was actually a flower garden. The Greenlease family, Bobby's parents, didn't find out that Bobby was even missing until later that afternoon. So same day, just later that afternoon. The nun who had let Bobby leave with Heady called to check on Mrs. Greenlease and asked how she was feeling. Of course, she had no idea what she was talking about. And from there, it only gets worse. Carl Hall sent a pin that Bobby was wearing the day that he was abducted to the Greenleases and demanded a cash ransom in the amount of $600,000. At the time, that was the largest ransom that had been paid in American history thus far, and in today's economy, that equates to just over $6 million. Of course, the Greenleases scrambled, but not too much because they were already pretty wealthy and just wanted their son back. Money was not necessarily an object. Mr. Greenlease complied, while Carl Hall called repeatedly to make them think that their son was still alive. Mrs. Greenlease talked to Hall at least 4 times, and he even told her that Bobby was, quote, quite the handful. Mind you, this is after he's dead, okay? On October 7th of 1953, after Carl Hall fled and ratted himself and Bonnie out, police uncovered Bobby's body from in the flower garden. Carl Hall dumped Bonnie just before he fled and did not give her any share of the $600,000 ransom. Hall and Heady confessed to the crime, and when the federal jury in Kansas City presented the verdict of the death sentence, Bonnie Brown Heady smiled. I feel like this bitch has no fear. I don't know. On December 18th of 1953, Hall and Heady were executed side by side in the gas chamber at Missouri State Penitentiary. Bonnie Brown Heady is actually the only woman to ever be executed in the gas chamber, and it is reported that she and Hall talked cheerfully right up until the last moments before they died. Carl Hall died first, and Heady held out until she had to take her last breath and couldn't hold it anymore. One thing I would like to add to wrap up this awful story is that Carl Hall had originally planned to kidnap the Greenlease's 11-year-old daughter, but decided 7-year-old Bobby would be a much easier target. The year after the deaths of Hall and Heady in 1954, there was a prison riot in which several inmates, as well as guards, were either killed or severely injured. The prison was set on fire. Inmates escaped, or they tried to. They were not successful. The Missouri State Penitentiary is known as the bloodiest 47 acres in America, and I would have to agree. I mean, the facility itself was designed to look unappealing and unfriendly, and while the prison itself is now closed, you can actually go do ghost tours there, and my friends and I definitely experienced some things. In the death row section of the prison, which is underground, Jessica was saying her stomach felt like it was being twisted in knots. I was very nauseous and heavy feeling. I even sat in the execution chairs where 40 people were put to death, including Bonnie and Carl. But it was a great tour, and if you're ever in Jefferson City, Missouri, I highly recommend it. So the ghost tour started at 8 p.m., and without really knowing anything about the prison, even just looking at it from outside is scary. It felt really hard for me to quiet my mind. There was a lot going on. The beginning of the tour, they gave us some history, and it just kept getting more and more overwhelming as we got closer to the gas chamber where they did the executions. At one point, we were in the death row section, and that, like I said, was when I started feeling really heavy, nauseous, just all around uncomfortable. As soon as Jessica and I were out of there, we immediately felt better. I don't know. That was pretty weird. But the death row section is pretty dark. The tour guide was tapping on shit and made us turn out our lights and was trying to provoke spirit, which I didn't love. Not my favorite thing, especially tortured souls like the ones I imagined being there, a bunch of murderers and shit. No, thank you. I mean, really, you could feel the anger in that place. But also, we were kind of 3 slightly intoxicated women that fully believe in the paranormal, so that could have been the tour guide's energy also. They were pretty done with us by the time we were out of there. So we get to the gas chamber part. They actually made us drive down to it. So I just imagine how long that walk or ride was for the people about to be put to death. It was a lot smaller than I thought it would be, and the observation area was really weird. It was wooden bleachers set up in front of plexiglass so that family or, whoever could come in and watch these people die. Also, there were cells across from the actual chamber. I'm talking a 3-foot distance, and you could also see into the chamber from those cells. So the inmates were watching other inmates die and sitting in there knowing that was about to happen for them too. How fucking wild. Anyway, I took full advantage of sitting in the actual execution chair. There were 2. So what had happened was they actually installed a second chair, shortly after Bonnie and Carl were sentenced, given the death sentence, so that they could sit together. So I did sit in both of those chairs, and it was definitely the heaviest part of the tour. Heavy, but peaceful in a way, hard to describe. They had photos of all of the people that were executed there, and mind you, there was 40, and like I said, 1 female, which was Bonnie Brown Heady. Overall, it was a great experience. I definitely got some really creepy pictures. We leave the next morning after getting virtually no sleep, and I'm convinced that Christine's brother is sitting in a chair, the one that I said had passed, listening to us talk, and she was like, yeah, he's always there. Chris and I were talking, and I was standing at the front door in front of her bedroom door. I go to walk out the front door, and I swear I felt and saw someone move to the left and walk past me. So I turn around and was like, what? No one was there. I look back the other way, and Chris is still in her room, and I was like, did you just walk behind me? And she was like, no, that's just Mark. It's fine. And then on the way back to Texas, both my car and phone started acting up, so now I'm scared I brought a ghost home with me. At the same time, Spirit does like to fuck with my electronics. So my car starts doing this weird thing. It won't let me drive over 60. The check engine light's coming on, and I had just gotten everything tuned up before I took this trip, new brakes, new tires, all of, the works. So nothing was wrong with my car. It had just been looked at by 3 different mechanics. So anyway, the check engine light's coming on. It's not letting me go over 60. It's raining where we're at. We're in the middle of fucking nowhere, Oklahoma. So I pull into an AutoZone and have them check the codes. He tells me it's something like a torque clutch converter malfunction. I don't even know. So he sends us to this other mechanic place way down the road. It was like 6 miles away. And mind you, this is like dirt road country, Oklahoma. We had no idea where we were. So they say that essentially the same thing. And I'm like, okay, well, great. Can you fix it? And he's like, I can, but it'll be weeks. And I was just like, at this point, about to lose my shit, because I was like, listen, I'm just trying to get back to Texas. I just need to get home. Can we drive back on this? He was like, you can. I don't really recommend going over, 65, which we had been the whole time. So honestly, I don't even know what happened with the car, because now it is completely fine. Nothing's wrong with it. There was a point where my phone started acting weird. We were listening to a podcast and the audio went all like crazy. And I don't know. That was an experience too. But anyway, it was a really good trip. Overall, really good trip. I am so happy that I got to see my friends. That's about it for this episode, you guys. I just wanted to kind of give you that experience retelling and give you some history. And I hope you enjoyed this episode. I'm thinking about maybe doing more of these kind of true crime, paranormal-esque types of episodes, but I want to go scope out some haunted locations around me, especially after the last episode with Eric the Ghost Hunter. Anyway, stay tuned for next week. I love you guys. Thank you for listening to the Bewitching Hour podcast. Again, I'm your host, Kat, and you can follow me on Instagram at Kat Alexander with 2 R's. You can follow the Bewitching Hours Instagram at Bewitching Podcast. And please, don't forget to rate me 5 stars and leave a nice review. In perfect love and perfect trust, until next time. She was just a wish. She was just a wish. And a memory is all that is left of her now. Lightning strikes, maybe one.